I built the company from the ground up, alone. And then my own daughter walked back in, with a man I'd never seen before, and told me to hand it all over to her fiancé. If you don't agree, she said, you don't deserve to be my mother. In that moment, I couldn't tell if she'd lost her mind, or if I had finally come to my senses. They thought I'd fall for their carefully laid trap, all in the name of love. What they didn't know was, in this game, they were never the hunters. I started this company when I was barely out of college. My husband thought I was too ambitious, too sharp for a woman. So he ran off to Europe with a softer woman, someone who knew how to smile and stay quiet. He left me with a baby in one arm and balance sheets in the other. I fed Avery with my left hand and signed payroll checks with my right. Avery never knew what struggle looked like. By the time she was old enough to remember anything, I was already ranked on the fortune list. She was the kind of daughter people called heiress in glossy magazines. She went to the best prep schools money could buy. Straight Assuntal finals week. When I got a call from the headmaster, turns out, she'd paid one of the scholarship kids to take her exams. Paid, threatened, cornered the poor girl into submission. She got into an elite university overseas because I wrote a check the size of a mid-range condo. And every month after that, she wrote me letters filled with tear stories about rent, tuition, food she couldn't afford. Until I found out where the money really went. Designer bags, private clubs, imported liquor. I kept thinking, she'll grow out of it. She's still young. She'll mature. But then she gave me this surprise. The boardroom door opened right in the middle of my quarterly earnings presentation. I was just finishing a breakdown of revenue volatility when the click of the glass door snapped everyone's attention. Avery stood there, flawless in a beige trench coat, makeup perfect, one hand delicately looped through the arm of a man I didn't recognize. Yes, looped like she was bringing her prom date to brunch. The man had the face of a daytime TV doctor, Cleans Haven. Gymfit. The kind of man who doesn't speak unless it's into a mirror. He said nothing, just followed her in like he belonged there. For 2 full seconds, I froze. So did the board. Except for Jacob, seated by the window. He raised an eyebrow, smelled drama before it started. Hi, everyone, Avery said brightly, like she'd wandered into a cocktail party by mistake. I know you're busy, but I have an announcement. It couldn't wait. I felt the back of my neck tighten. Avery, I said, setting down the mic. This isn't the place for you right now. I know, she smiled, ignoring me completely, and gave the man's arm a gentle tug. This is James, my fiancé. I heard someone, our chief legal officer, suck in a breath at the far end of the table. We've talked it through, Avery continued. He'll start as director of marketing, get up to speed with operations, and eventually, I want him to transition into co-leading the company with me. Her voice was full of confidence, like she thought the deal had already been signed. The room dropped into a thick, silent pause. I stared at her. I didn't stand. Not yet. My fingertips tapped twice on the armrest. Quiet but sharp. Avery, I said evenly, you don't get to make that call. We're in the middle of a meeting. Mom, she said, dragging out the word in that syrupy tone she used as a teenager. You always told me I should get more involved. Well, I've found the right person. I turned my eyes to James. He gave me a polite nod, the kind you'd give a hostess before asking for a second glass of wine. I couldn't stop myself. Mr. James, I asked, do you have any idea what the role of marketing director entails? He smiled. Still said nothing. Avery, I said, my voice calm but clipped. You want to be involved in the company. Fine. But this is not a wedding gift. Your father left when I was 30. I built this company and raised you by myself. I didn't do all that so you could drag in a stranger to run it. Her face twitched, but she recovered fast. Stranger, really, Mom. I stood. Jacob, I said without raising my voice. Pause the meeting. Clear the room. He didn't hesitate. The board members began gathering their folders and laptops with remarkable speed. No one made eye contact. A few glanced at Avery, but most simply walked out. The door closed behind them with a sharp click. We were alone. Avery dropped her designer purse onto the table with a thud. Her smile was gone. You never planned to let me take over, did you? You've been shutting me out from day one. This company is mine, I said coldly, and I have veto power over all senior appointments. You want to get married, that's your business. But don't use my company as your dowry. You just can't stand the thought of me being happy, she shouted. You failed at marriage. And now you want me to fail too. James finally moved, placing a calming hand on her shoulder. I didn't respond. I reached for the quarterly report on the table. You should go. Avery's eyes burned. You'll regret this. I said nothing. She stormed out. Her heels struck the floor like hammers. I sat back down and closed my eyes. Papers slid from the edge of the table onto the floor with a sigh, like even they were tired. I picked up the phone. Security, I said. Effective immediately. Revoke access credentials for Avery Stone and James Holden. Board-level clearance only. Until further notice. A pause. Then a voice replied. Calm and professional. Understood, Ms. Stone. I hung up. The pressure behind my temples pulsed like a warning drumbeat. My daughter had come home. But she hadn't brought back love. She brought war. A few days passed in silence before Avery reached out again. One simple message. Mom, can we talk? Noon today. Your favorite Italian place. I stared at the screen for a long time. She hadn't called. No texts. Not even a whisper on social media. For Avery, that was what passed for radio silence. She was the kind of girl who wanted the whole world to know she was upset. I hadn't planned to answer. But that morning, while checking my email, a headline from a mental health newsletter popped upon I'd meant to unsubscribe from weeks ago. Don't misread your daughter, sometimes they're just missing the words. I closed the window and stared out at the gray Boston skyline. Half an hour later, I typed back, 12 it is. She chose a trendy Italian spot downtown Lightwood, too many mirrors, and the kind of overexposed lighting that made the food look better in photos than on plates. The sort of place that lived to be posted on Instagram with hashtags like mother-daughter brunch. I hated it. When I walked in, she was already seated by the window, flipping through the menu like a regular. The sun hit her face just right, lighting up her carefully contoured cheekbones, the glossy pink of her lips. She looked perfect. Too perfect. Like someone holding their mask a beat too long. She smiled and waved me over like we were old friends meeting after a yoga retreat. You look calmer than a few days ago, I said, sliding into the chair across from her and taking off my sunglasses. That's because I didn't come to fight. She stirred her strawberry soda with a glass straw, her freshly manicured fingers moving with practiced grace. I just think there are things we, as mother and daughter, should talk about. She was dressed in one of those deceptively simple silk blouses that cost 4 figures, styled to say effortless, worn to scream status. But I knew the truth. This whole polished ensemble was camouflage. Because after our last encounter, I'd cut her off every card, every auto transfer, every financial lifeline. And Avery never saved. She didn't believe in a future that wasn't funded. I didn't order anything. Just picked up the menu, glanced, and set it down. Go ahead. She smiled and slid a folder across the table. James and I are launching a new project. I didn't reach for it. She opened it herself, flipping through pages like she was pitching a seed round to Sand Hill Road. We're building a Gen Z dating platform. She said brightly. AI-assisted matching based on behavioral cues and semantic analysis. No one's nailed this yet, it's a wide-open market. I let her finish her pitch before answering. And you think I'd be interested in this? You're one of the first investors in AI on the East Coast, she said, eyes gleaming. You've always had a nose for emerging trends. I invest in people who know what they're doing, I replied flatly. Avery bit her lip, paused, then pushed forward. James has a tech background. He studied computer science in Canada. Didn't finish. But he's got real-world experience. She flipped to a resume page like she was showing me her new dog's pedigree. I pulled the page out, scanned it for 3 seconds, and said, this resume is fake. Her head snapped up. Excuse me. I met her eyes. James has used at least 3 aliases since 2011. He was tied to 2 financial fraud cases in Vancouver, charges dropped due to lack of evidence. But the police file is still active. He went by John Harris for a while. In 2018, that name came up in a scholarship embezzlement probe at a university in Quebec. Her face drained of color. He's not some underdog reinventing himself. I continued, voice calm but deliberate. He's a professional con artist. And his specialty is taking money from women who think they're special. You investigated him, she asked, her voice rising. Yes, I said, unapologetic. She slapped the table and stood up. You had no right. I'm your mother, I said, standing with her, my voice lower but infinitely more solid. The moment you dragged that man into my boardroom, you made it my business. She was breathing fast, eyes glassy. You've never trusted me. Every choice I make, you second guess. I didn't respond. She let out a dry, bitter laugh and then hissed. You're just a bitter woman whose husband left her. Of course you want me to be alone, too. You don't understand love. You only know how to control. Her voice cracked on the last word. You want me to obey you, she went on, eyes burning. Walk the path you laid out. Play the cold-blooded queen you've always been. That's the only version of me you'll ever respect. Right. I picked up the folder and stood. You're free to choose, Avery. But don't ask me to fund a fantasy when I know it ends in ruin. That's not love. That's complicity. For the first time, I let the weight show in my voice. You're not stupid. You're just refusing to see. You want this relationship to prove you're not a failure. I paused. But you're willing to burn everything I built to do it. She didn't respond. As I walked out, I heard the glass from her soda tip against the marble table. It didn't shatter, just gave a soft, pathetic clink. I didn't turn around. Outside, the midday sun was too bright. My phone buzzed. A message from Jacob. Canadian file confirmed. 3 aliases tied to one identity. Photos attached. Want us to forward to the feds. I stared at the screen. Didn't answer. Not yet. She still hadn't woken up. When I got home that evening, Maya was crouched by the kitchen door, balancing a bunch of green onions in one hand and a bag of chicken thighs in the other, trying not to let either fall out of the paper sack. She heard the door open and glanced up with a smile. You're home early, Grace. Didn't feel like going into the office today, I said, slipping off my coat and hanging it by the door. What are you making? Chicken soup. She placed the ingredients gently in the sink, her movements quiet and precise. It's getting colder. Thought you could use something warm. You coughed twice last night. I coughed. I raised an eyebrow. 3:12 a.m. I chuckled. You keep track of that too. You cough like a fire alarm, she said with a shrug, already peeling ginger. Maya was the daughter of my former driver. Her parents died in a car accident years ago, and none of her relatives wanted to take her in. So I did. She was smart, observant, and always did well in school. I poured almost as much into raising her as I did into Avery. And in that moment, the house felt quieter than it had in months. Not empty, just peaceful. The kind of quiet that comes without judgment or competition. I took a deep breath, only halfway in before the doorbell rang. I assumed it was Jacob dropping off a document. But when I opened the door, Avery was standing there. And behind her was James. My chest clenched like a wire had snapped inside it. Before I could say a word, she stormed in on 3-inch heels. James trailed behind her. Expressionless, silent, like he'd been told to stay quiet and look pretty. What is this supposed to mean? Avery made a beeline for the kitchen, her eyes locking onto Maya. She's family now. Maya didn't even have time to take off her apron. She looked up, startled. Avery, don't act innocent. You've been waiting for me to leave, so you could crawl into my place, haven't you? I haven't, Maya said, taking a step back. I crossed the room in 2 strides and stood between them. That's enough. Avery, calm down. But it was like something inside her snapped. She raised her hand and slapped Maya, hard. The sound cracked across the tile walls like a shot. Maya staggered slightly. A red welt bloomed on her cheek, but she didn't cry out. She just stood there, jaw tight, swallowing it down. You little leech, Avery spat. Feeling proud of yourself. Think you've replaced me, playing the new golden girl of this family. I didn't think. My hand moved before I even felt it. I slapped her back louder, sharper. Avery froze, her hand flying to her cheek. You hit me, she whispered. You hit me for her. I met her eyes. My voice was low and steady. I didn't hit you for her. I hit you because someone had to remind you where the line is. From the hallway came the sound of a camera shutter. Then a door creaking open. I turned. A neighbor's kid, one of those TikTok-obsessed types, was standing at the edge of the foyer, holding his phone like he'd just stumbled into TMZ gold. I closed my eyes for a beat. Of course this would end up online. James finally moved. Avery, let's go. She looked between me and Maya, then down at the coat James was holding out to her. She didn't say anything, just turned and walked out. At the door, she paused. You're both going to regret this. Then she was gone. Maya stood rooted to the spot, her hands trembling slightly. I went to her, picked up a cool cloth. Let me see. She shook her head. It's fine. It's not. I gently took her wrist. my voice softer now. You shouldn't have had to take that. Her eyes dropped to the floor. After a moment, she whispered, I wasn't trying to take her place. I know. I paused. But she can't admit that the place was hers to lose. That night, the video hit the internet. Within an hour, it was everywhere. Tech queen slaps daughter in family drama over adopted rival. Corporate heiress feud erupts, inheritance battle gets physical. Who's Grace's real successor? I scrolled through the feed, watching the chaos build. Waited for Jacob to text me the legal team's damage control strategy. One comment stood out. Honestly, I'm with Grace. That girl needed to be put in her place. I tapped the power button and let the screen go black. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled all the way to the bottom. Avery, in the block list. I stared at it for a long time. In the end, I didn't change a thing. Because what I realized that night was this. Some daughters don't break your heart. They walk out of it. All on their own. And I won't stop the whole train just because she decided to jump off. On the third morning, I hadn't even fully woken up when my phone began buzzing on the nightstand, rattling like it was nervous to deliver the news. Maya had sent a message. You probably shouldn't look at Twitter. Frowning, I opened the app and the first post hit me like a slap. A video, taken right outside my house. There was Avery hair a mess, tears streaking her mascara, standing on my front steps, screaming into her phone. Do you know who my mother is? Grace, the woman who believes in inheritance more than blood. She kicked me out of the house and crowned her little foster pet as her real daughter. The comment section exploded. Some were on her side. Others were merciless. Slapping your daughter is wrong, but after that kitchen scene, I'd slap her too. Grace is cold, but damn, she knows better than to hand over a company to a girl running on hormones. I sat at the edge of the bed, scrolling through the replies like they were tiny blades slicing up whatever composure I had left. Maya stepped into the doorway with a tray in hand. She paused, reading the tension in the room. You want some coffee? Just set it down. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand, threw off the blanket, and sat up straight. My throat was tight, my fingers numb, still curled around the phone's edges. Has she completely lost her mind? I muttered. Maya didn't respond. She just placed the tray down gently and sat across from me, waiting until my pulse calmed. The company, that day, was chaos. Jacob stormed into my office, flinging a printed draft of a statement onto my desk. Our PR team is on it, but you need to respond now. Otherwise we'll have to escalate with legal. I skimmed the document and pushed it aside. We're not responding. Grace, the internet's already decided you're the villain, the heartless mother who disowned her only daughter. He paused. Avery's playing the sympathy card. And right now, it's working. She's no longer the heir to this company. I said flatly. He studied me for a moment. Then do we issue a formal statement confirming that? I looked out the window. Beyond the buildings, the Boston harbor was slate gray, clouds heavy and sinking low like they might drop a storm over the city at any second. Do it, I said. She wants to cut ties in public. Fine. I'll meet her there. That afternoon, I called a closed-door board meeting. With legal counsel present, I officially revoked Avery's inheritance rights and named Maya as the provisional successor. After signing, I glanced across the table. One of our senior directors, a woman with a daughter Avery's age, sighed softly. Her daughter had interned with us before deciding to start her own design business in Chicago. She'd once told me, we tried to shape them too much, and in the process, became the walls they learned to hate. I didn't answer her then, because I knew I didn't fail to give Avery freedom. I gave her too much, and she threw away responsibility and respect like they were optional. That evening, Maya helped me clean out Avery's room. She moved gently, as if trying not to disturb a ghost. I stood in the doorway, watching the glow of the bedside lamp, the familiar scent of her perfume still lingering in the corners. Piece by piece, we packed away the girl who used to live there. On the nightstand sat an old jigsaw puzzle box. 14 years ago. I gave it to Avery for her birthday. We'd spent 3 weekends putting together that Boston skyline. I remember how proud she was when we framed it. Maya opened the closet. A box fell with a dull thud. She crouched to pick it up, then froze. Should I pack this too? She asked, lifting a photo. I stepped closer. It was a snapshot from elementary school. Avery, ponytailed and beaming, flashed a peace sign with one hand and slung the other around a slim, bespectacled girl with short hair and a shy, gentle smile. Maya stared at the photo for a long moment. This girl, She looks familiar, she said softly. I didn't respond. Just took the photo from her hands. Keep this one. The rest can go. She nodded, not asking why. As I turned and walked out, I heard the hiss of packing tape being pulled, then the sharp snap as the box was sealed shut. A chapter, boxed and labeled, ready for the attic. The next morning, the company's stock price dipped. Not a crash, not a surge, just a ripple-like wind skimming the surface of a lake. And I stood by the conference room window, watching Boston wake under a layer of cold light, the sky uncertain, the city pretending not to notice the storm brewing inside it. Avery wanted to burn the world down just to feel like she'd won something. But she forgot one thing. The world doesn't reward noise. It rewards structure. She thought she was tearing me apart. All she really did was sever her last thread to belonging. Maya had been on edge for days. She hadn't said anything outright, but I noticed the way she kept her phone within reach, always on silent, and how she'd pause mid-task to glance out the window, like something might appear out there she didn't want to miss. She was normally calm, grounded. If she was nervous, then something had shifted, something she hadn't figured out how to say. It wasn't until Friday evening that she knocked on my office door, notebook in hand. Grace, do you have a minute? I nodded. She stepped in and gently set the notebook on my desk. I didn't mean to snoop, she said quickly, a little flustered. Avery dropped her bag outside the other day, and the wind knocked it open. I was just helping pick it up and I found this. She opened the notebook to a crumpled page near the middle, blue ink, all capital letters, hastily scrawled. JH 2018 Canada fraud. I stared at it. My heart skipped. Yota. John Harris. One of the names James had used in Canada. I looked up at Maya. She wasn't jumping to conclusions, but she'd seen enough to be worried. You think Avery's been looking into him? Maybe. She sat down slowly, her voice a touch quieter than usual. She's been acting weird around him. Last week, I saw her sitting in the car for over an hour, just staring at her phone. The screen was lit. She was reading something. Hard. I held the paper in my hand. Every line of ink dragging me back through years of half-formed suspicions and threads I never tied up. I used to think Avery had been brainwashed. Now, for the first time, I wondered, had she known all along? Was she just waiting? That thought hadn't even settled when Maya came to me the next morning holding her phone. I followed them last night, she said. South End. That Italian place. You went alone. I frowned. I stayed on the patio. They didn't see me. She handed me the phone. I recorded it. I hit play. The background noise was instant and immersive, glasses clinking. Muffled jazz, the hiss of ice in a shaker. Then James's voice, low and angry. I told you what to do. She's your mother, a big-time CEO, and you still can't squeeze 80 grand out of her. Avery's voice followed, hoarse and weary. I tried. She's not who she used to be. James. No shit, she's not. Look at how she pampers that little charity case of hers. Time's running out. You stall again. I'll find someone else. The recording cut. I stared at the black screen, like the truth might crawl out of it and bite me. I closed my eyes. Hit pause. You're sure they didn't see you? Maya nodded. I stayed outside, but something's seriously wrong. I didn't answer. I walked to the window. The trees in Boston Common swayed under a sharp autumn wind. James hadn't shown up by chance. He'd been drawn in. He picked Avery because she was the perfect mark, clean background, big inheritance, emotional gaps wide enough to drive a truck through. The kind of woman con men circle like vultures. That afternoon, I went down to the archives and pulled out a file I hadn't touched in 3 years. An old case I had quietly submitted to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Back then, it was anonymous. A partial report. No traction. It was about a girl named Lily. She had gone to the University of British Columbia. Smart, shy, and broke. She'd taken out online loans, maxed out her credit, then took her own life in a campus dorm. She had also been dating someone at the time, a man named John Harris. Same MO, different country. Different victim. And Lily, she wasn't just a case number. She was Avery's childhood friend. The girl in that photo. I remembered Avery saying, years ago, she was my best friend. Back then I hadn't thought much of it. Now, the puzzle pieces snapped together with horrifying clarity. James didn't just fool Avery. He destroyed the one person Avery had trusted most. I went back to my desk and sent Jacob a message. Set up a meeting with your FBI contact. I want to reopen that old file. His reply came fast. So, you're finally ready. I didn't respond. Because this wasn't about being ready. It was about finally seeing the whole board. Avery's been playing her own game. She wasn't asleep. She was standing in the fire, waiting for Simeone Anito realized she wasn't burning. She was fighting. The only question now was how much longer she could survive it. When Jacob walked into my office with the case file from 3 years ago, his expression was complicated. He wore his usual gray suit, tie slightly loosened, but his eyes held something I rarely saw in him. Not confusion, not doubt, guilt, maybe, or pity. He placed the thick file on my desk and said, "Why did you stop pursuing it back then?" I didn't answer right away. My eyes were fixed on the name printed across the cover, Lily Hayes. A photograph was clipped to the first page scanned, a little grainy, but unmistakable. Short hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a gentle expression, the kind of soft, inward smile people wear when they're not used to being looked at. I'd seen that face just days ago in a photo found in Avery's old room. I opened the file slowly. The first page covered Lily's background and academic record. First-generation college student. Full scholarship to the University of British Columbia. High grades. Reserved demeanor. Mild social anxiety. Avery had mentioned her once, in a first-year psychology paper. Called her the quietest, most dependable person I know. I never read that paper. I flipped to the next page. It detailed Lily's final semester missed classes, unsubmitted assignments, lack of contact with professors. 1 month later, she was found in her campus apartment, a stack of journals, several unsent letters. One letter read, "I thought he was the best thing that ever happened to me. Turns out, even luck can lie. He said he just needed the money temporarily. I never planned to ask for it back. I just wanted to know if I was ever worth staying for." The page was creased, water damaged, tear-stained. I closed the folder and held it under my hand for a moment. What name was he using back then? John Harris. Jacob replied. And he had another alias, James Holden. I let out a bitter laugh. Didn't even bother straying too far. Instead of heading to the executive dining floor for lunch, I sat at my desk and opened my phone. Typed in, James Holden. Then, Avery Stone. I didn't expect anything. But the internet always outpaces expectation. Within seconds, a video had made it to the trending tab. I tapped it open. A young man in a black t-shirt, holding his phone selfie style, stood in front of a blurry projection slide. Recognized this guy. He scammed my friend back in 2018. Now he's got a new name and a new hustle. This time, he's hooked the daughter of a tech queen, Avery Stone. The comment section was a wildfire. No way he's still free. Isn't this, like, the third time? I remember this Casey, it went nowhere after it blew up online. I kept scrolling until I found it. A repost of the slap video. The one from my front steps. Captioned, Grace Stone's daughter sobs in public. Betrayed, beaten, and abandoned. And then right below it another post. A screenshot of Maya. In my kitchen, hair in a loose low ponytail. Smiling gently, holding a bowl of steaming soup. Captioned, the replacement's already been chosen. Why are y'all still crying for Avery? I locked my phone screen and leaned back in my chair, eyes closed. Avery hadn't issued a statement. She hadn't defended herself against James's record, hadn't denied being a love-blind heiress, and she certainly hadn't shared those scribbled notes or the recordings we both knew she had. She did nothing. She let the world believe she was still that reckless rich girl, the one who would torch her own future for a man with a pretty smile and no credentials. But now I saw it clearly. Avery wasn't blind to who James was. She was waiting for him to show his teeth on his own. She had chosen, deliberately, to cast herself as the hunted, to let herself be labeled the prey on every feed and algorithm. But she wasn't. She was the hunter, and she was crouching in the very trap she dug with her own hands. That night, Maya knocked on the frame of my study door. "You working? Come in." She stepped in slowly, then walked over to my desk and placed a notebook down beside me. I went back through her journal today. "Whose?" "Lily's," she said. "The one she gave Avery before. Everything." I looked up. There was a softness in Maya's expression I'd never seen before, something deeper than concern. A quiet ache. "She wrote something," Maya said softly. She said, "Even if the whole world stops believing in Avery, I won't. Bad kids can become good once if someone's willing to stand beside them long enough." I closed my eyes. And in that moment, I could feel some internal scale finally tipping in my chest. I used to think Avery was growing into someone unrecognizable. But now I realize she'd been following me all along. Studying me. Emulating me. She just chose a lonelier path to get there. I opened my laptop and typed a new email. Subject line. James Holden request to reopen investigation. Recipient. My contact at the Federal Financial Crimes Unit. I didn't add a single attachment. Didn't bother with pleasantries or explanations. Just sent it. Then I leaned back again, watching the city lights flicker against the black windows of the skyline. This time, I wasn't moving to protect her. I was going to stand with her and finish what she'd started. At exactly 10:00 for that night, my phone rang from an unrecognized number. It only rang twice. I didn't even have time to answer before it went dead. 3 minutes later, a voice memo landed in my inbox. No subject line, no message, just an auto-generated throwaway email address and an attached audio file. I hit play. The wind rustled faintly in the background. Footsteps on pavement. Then James's voice, low and tense. Are you out of your damn mind? Do you even realize how close we are to being watched? Avery's voice followed. Hoarse, like she'd just finished crying. I've already sold everything I can. James, what else do you want from me? Go to your mother. She's your last asset. Avery. She hates me. There was a pause. Then James let out a bitter chuckle. She doesn't hate you. She hates that you're not like her, cold, sharp, untouchable. You need to stop pretending to be the victim and start being the pawn you were meant to be. Distant engine noise cut and he was walking away. Avery was left breathing into the night air. Alone. The recording ended. My finger hovered over the mouse for a long time. I didn't move. The thing I've always hated most wasn't betrayal. It was watching someone stare down a monster and pretend they were fine just long enough for that monster to reveal itself. The next morning, I called Jacob into my office. I need eyes on Avery, I said. He frowned. You think she's doing something dangerous? I think she's carrying it all alone, I replied. And she might believe I've stopped caring. He studied me for a beat, then gave a slow nod. We'll track her remotely. No interference. Also, I handed him the audio file. Have IT trace the source. If we can ID the sender, great. If not, we'll assume she sent it. Jacob arched a brow. So, you're starting to believe her. I never said I didn't. I said evenly. Avery disappeared that week. No posts. No comments. No mentions on James's feed either. I asked Maya if she'd heard anything. She shook her head. Last time we talked was in the parking lot. She said she needed to clear her head for a few days. Was James with her? She nodded. They mentioned going on a trip. No real destination. What was her tone like? Maya paused, thinking. Honestly, calm. Too calm. Like someone who already knew what was about to happen. Before I could respond, the office phone rang. Jacob's voice came through. Low and clipped. Her phone pinged off a different tower last night. Way off our preset route. I stood up instantly. Where? South Side. Near that old industrial zone, those abandoned warehouses. My pulse spiked. She drove herself. No. She's in a rental under James's name. The tracker's been disabled. We're getting partial pings through a third-party system. Is she alive? No confirmed signs either way. He replied quietly. I gripped the edge of my desk. I'm going. Grace. Jacob's voice sharpened. You can't go alone. You know what this could be. She might be bait. If I don't go, I said, my voice low, she becomes bait for real. And I'm not letting that happen again. At 7 p.m. Maya called. Grace, she whispered, breath tight. She reached out. My stomach clenched. What did she say? Not much. Just that she's making her final move. Told me to stay away. She hesitated. But I need to see it for myself. I won't go inside. Just stay nearby. Maya. She already dropped her location. It's the warehouse James used to pick her up from. You know the one. I did. I'm going with you. A pause. Do you trust me? She asked softly. I sighed. Right now, you're the only one I do. That night, under the kind of wind that makes your bones ache. Maya and I drove through the outskirts of the city in a black SUV Jacob had prepped for surveillance. The warehouse district looked just as I remembered, forgotten, rusted out, echoing with the ghosts of long-dead industry. We parked 100 yards out. Killed the lights. In the distance, a pair of cars sat beneath a broken security lamp. One was James's. The other, a cargo van I didn't recognize. Two figures moved between them, one tall and broad, the other leaner. I couldn't see their faces. Maya gripped the edge of the console, eyes fixed ahead. She's really trying to draw them out, she whispered. I nodded slowly. And in that moment, it hit me. Avery never screamed for help. She didn't throw tantrums or stage press conferences. She just went quiet. And when my daughter goes quiet, hats when I know she's betting everything. This time, she was putting on a show. And I was the one making sure the stage lights stayed on. We weren't a fractured mother and daughter anymore. We were something else now. Hunters. Both of us. I sat in the car with the window cracked open just enough for the cold wind to snake its way in, biting at the back of my neck. Just minutes earlier, James had called. His voice was ragged and sharp, laced with barely concealed desperation and threat. I know you've been following us. Grace. Back off or neither of your precious daughters makes it out of this. I didn't answer. He took my silence as compliance. You've got money. I'm not greedy. 200 grand in cash. Tonight, I'll send the location. No cops. No games. I waited 2 seconds before replying. I'll bring the money. But first I want to hear Avery's voice. There was a pause on the line, like he was weighing whether the performance was worth the risk. Then I heard her barely more than a whisper, her voice wrecked. Mom, don't come. I'll buy you time. I'll find a way. That one line crushed the air from my lungs. James yanked the phone back. Bring the money, Grace. Or start planning the funerals. Then the call ended. The trunk of the car held a steel case packed with what looked like 200,000 in cash. Every bill was a high-quality fake, layered over a core of tracking chips and remote audio sensors. Jacob and the federal task force were already stationed around the warehouse and rooftops. In vans, drones circling overhead. The sting was set. Grace. Jacob's voice crackled through the earpiece. You're clear to enter. I opened the car door. Cold air slammed into me. Maya reached for my sleeve. Are you sure about going in alone? I nodded. He thinks I'd never let Avery die. That's what he's betting on. Her fingers clenched for a second before letting go. I'll let him finish his show, I said quietly. Just wait for my signal. The warehouse door stood open, lit by a few bare hanging bulbs that cast long, nauseating shadows. The space smelled like rust and old oil. James leaned against a steel beam inside, a metal rod in one hand. His other hand was clamped tight on Avery's shoulder, forcing her into a folding chair like she was part of the decor. The moment I stepped in, he turned. Grace. He smiled, the kind that makes your skin crawl. So glad you could make it. What do you want? I said, my tone a perfect monotone. A simple deal. He stepped forward, boots tapping against the concrete. You bring the money. I release her. I pointed behind me. The case is in the car. Back seat. You can check it yourself. He didn't move. You think I'm stupid? He snapped. You show up. The money shows up. Who else showed up? Grace. I smiled faintly. Are you afraid I love my daughter too much to come alone? His eyes flickered. Then, without warning, he jerked Avery to her feet, wrapped his arm around her throat, and pulled a folding knife from his jacket, pressing it just beneath her jaw. You say one more word, and she won't see daylight. I didn't flinch. You think you've won, I said, voice low. But the truth is you were already dead the moment you walked into my life. He froze. And at that exact second the lights blazed on. All of them. The ceiling vents burst open. A drone descended from the rafters, casting a red laser up between James's shoulder blades. Federal agents. A voice thundered from the far corridor. Drop your weapon, hands where we can see them. James's face fractured into panic. Fury. Disbelief. He thought he was the hunter. He was just the bait. He shoved Avery aside and bolted for the side exit, but a tactical officer was already there, tackling him to the ground with brutal precision. In seconds, he was cuffed, face down, shouting into the dirt. Avery collapsed to her knees, gasping. I rushed to her. Mom. Her voice shook. I almost didn't. But you did. I wrapped my arms around her. You lured him this far. You saw it through. This one's yours. Avery. You won. As James was dragged toward the waiting cruiser, he thrashed in the officer's grip. You set me up. You were all in on it. You lied. I stepped forward until I could see his face up close. You never understood what a woman is capable of, I said, my voice cold as steel. Especially when you threaten the one thing she swore to protect. He snarled something I didn't bother to hear was already being shoved into the back seat. By the time we stepped out of the warehouse, the horizon had begun to pale. Dawn was blooming across the skyline, soft, tentative, like even the sun wasn't sure it was safe to rise. I held Avery close. Maya stood beside us, eyes rimmed with tears but sharp with something else, certainty. The three of us watched the squad cars drive off, sirens off. Just tires against gravel, fading into the distance. Avery turned to me, voice barely above a whisper. You know when I started to doubt him? When? When he forgot Lily, she said. He called her ordinary. Couldn't even remember what kind of glasses she wore. I said nothing. She wore olive green, half-rim frames, Avery said softly. The nose pads were cracked from overuse. Before every test, she'd rest her chin in her right palm and spin a pen with her left. Her eyes glistened. He forgot everything. Too clean. Too easy. I nodded. She closed her eyes, voice trembling. I just didn't want her to disappear like that. Like she never mattered. She didn't. I said gently. And from now on, she won't. The night James was taken away, Boston got its first snowfall of the year. I sat in my office, watching the snow blanket the city in silence. Everything outside the window was white, clean, deceptive in its stillness. Jacob walked in and placed a file on my desk, tapping the first page with 2 fingers. James Holden case summary, multiple aliases, interstate fraud, emotional exploitation, and financial coercion. His voice was low and steady. From Canada to the U.S. He cycled through at least 7 identities. He's conned women out of more than $1 million using charm, lies, and paper-thin reinvention. I nodded. I know. Jacob paused. He looked at me with something heavier than usual in his eyes, curiosity, maybe even respect. I didn't realize you were already setting the trap, he said quietly. I didn't answer. Just turned back to the snow, letting it speak for me. He waited, then asked, when did you decide to join her? It took me a long moment to reply. When I saw the photo, I said finally, and realized it wasn't Maya. It was Lily, the girl from Avery's college years, the friend she'd never truly said goodbye to. That night, when Maya mistook the photo for one of herself, I didn't correct her, but I knew. That wasn't Maya's soft smile or Avery's casual arm around just anyone. It was Lily, Avery's anchor during her most formative years, the girl who'd left quietly, tragically, and had never really been mentioned again. I used to think Lily's death had been Avery's heaviest scar. I didn't realize until now, it was also her catalyst. She didn't break. She endured, investigated, let herself be misunderstood, even staged a breakdown for the cameras, crying, screaming, desperate. Also, James would believe he'd won. She made herself look weak to lull the predator. And me, I didn't drag her out of the fire. I stepped into it with her. We never said the word alliance. But that night, we stopped being opponents. We became co-conspirators in something neither of us could have done alone. The next morning, the FBI held a press conference. The charges against James Holden were made public. Wire fraud, identity theft, coercion, financial abuse. His trial would begin the following month. I didn't attend the briefing. Neither did Avery. We stayed home, sat out on the balcony with mugs of hot cocoa, Maya in the kitchen humming while the city held its breath beneath a fresh coat of white. Avery and I sat close under one blanket. She stared out at the drifting snowflakes for a while, quiet, then said, "Do you know what he asked me, just before they took him away?" I turned. "What?" She smiled a little, not quite bitter, not quite sad. He said, "You never trusted Mui, did you help me set this up?" I waited. I didn't answer. She continued, "Because I wanted him to die never understanding. Women don't forgive because we're stupid. We forgive because we're strategic." I let out a small laugh. "You know who you remind me of?" "Let me guess. You." "No," I said, turning to face her. "The woman I used to wish I had the guts to become." That afternoon, Maya brought out an old shoebox while helping Avery clean her room. It was taped shut with aging clear tape, corners worn down with time. Inside were stacks of yellowing papers and a few thin notebooks. At the very top was a letter, Lily's handwriting. "Dear Avery, if the world ever gets too loud, too cruel, remember, you're never alone. Even if we stop talking, even if you doubt everything, the kindness you gave me, it's the best thing I'll take with me." Avery read it slowly, fingers trembling slightly as she reached the bottom. A single tear fell onto the page, quiet, uncontrolled, without shame. I didn't stop her. She wasn't crying because she lost. She cried because for the first time she didn't have to carry it all alone. She could just be a daughter, a friend, a woman with a past and a future that no longer needed to be explained or defended. That evening, the FBI confirmed what I already knew. James would be facing federal charges with a potential sentence of 20 years or more. I looked over at Avery. Do you want to do something for her? I asked. She nodded. Her eyes were clear now. Calm. I want to start a fund. In Lily's name. For girls like her. The ones who get tricked, silenced, erased. I smiled. Then we'll do it together. She looked at me. Together. Of course, I said. You started it. I'm just catching up. The following May, spring arrived a little late. The weather couldn't seem to make up its mind overcast in the morning. Bright by noon, the breeze carrying that heavy salt-sweet breath of the harbor. Like the city was still deciding whether or not to let people take off their coats. But at the gates of the university, the flags were already up. Banners for the commencement ceremony stretched between the red brick buildings, and students in navy blue gowns chased each other across the lawn, laughing like the world had never touched them. I sat in the second-to-last row of the audience, a folded program in my lap. Her name was printed clearly on the page. Avery Stone, Bachelor of Arts, Psychology, Extended Completion. She was scheduled 6th from the end. She'd picked that spot on purpose. Said she didn't want to stand out at the beginning, didn't want to make a show of finishing last. She just wanted to slip quietly across the stage and finish something she'd once believed she never would. When she stepped onto the platform, gown crisp, movement steady, eyes clear, I almost didn't recognize her. She wasn't the girl who once slammed the boardroom door behind her in a storm of hurt pride. She wasn't the tear-streaked face on a viral video. She was a woman who had weathered a storm and learned when to be soft and when to be steel. After the ceremony, she found me in the crowd. She had taken off her cap, and in its place her hair fluttered lightly in the wind, as if she'd just woken from a long, long sleep. She handed me a photo wrinkled once, now pressed flat inside a plastic sleeve. Her and Lily, years ago. One bright, one quiet. Side by side on the library steps, arms wrapped around a tower of books, their cheeks touching, smiling like the world belonged to them. She always said we'd graduate together. Avery said softly. Well, now she made it too. I looked at the photo. 2 girls frozen in time, one beaming, the other almost blushing. She'd be proud, I said. I am too, Avery replied. Then she pulled out her phone, uploaded 2 photos to her social feed. 1, her back turned, cap in hand, diploma held high. 2, that old picture of her and Lily. She typed one line, from first grade to graduation. We made it, Lily. A week later, the Lily Fund for Fraud Survivors was formally launched under our family's trust foundation. We pledged $500,000 for its first year, offering legal and psychological support to women caught in coercive financial abuse. A journalist asked me what the fund was meant to say. I answered honestly, to anyone still stuck in it, who hasn't found a way out yet, don't be afraid. You're not alone. That summer came fast. Maya stayed with us. The company gave her a rotational internship, easing her into the structure from the inside out. One evening, she asked me, do you ever regret taking me in? I set my teacup down, met her eyes. Not for a second. She smiled small, uncertain but warm, like something just blooming. As for Avery, she moved to Cambridge, found herself a tiny studio apartment just across from Harvard. She said she needed the quiet, said she was thinking of grad school, social psychology, trauma studies, maybe even victim advocacy. You're not trying to prove anything anymore, I asked her. She laughed, lifting her hands. At this point, there's only one thing I want to prove, that I belong to myself, not anyone else. A month later, the 3 of us drove out to Lily's resting place. Avery brought a bouquet of wild daisies. Maya carried a cake she had made the night before. I brought a letter. We took turns sitting by the grave, speaking softly, telling her everything that had happened, like she was still here, like she'd been listening the whole time. When it was Avery's turn, she laid the flowers down gently, then whispered, we really did graduate, didn't we? Sometimes, endings aren't meant to erase the past. They're just meant to give you a new name when you're finally ready to live differently. The girl who once demanded to be the heir was now simply the author of her own life. The girl they called unwanted had become the heart of this family. And I, a mother who once believed control was the only way to love, finally learned how to let go, how to trust, how to wait. because the best kind of alliance never comes from one person leading the other. It comes when you've both grown strong enough to turn toward each other at the exact right moment. We all graduated. Avery, Maya, and me.